Welcome to the CoCoRaHS winter season training for 2020. So here today we're going to talk you through the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. My name is Rich Maliaco. I'm one of the general forecaster meteorologists at the Weather Service in Glasgow. I'm here with Virginia. Virginia Rux, also another meteorologist with the Weather Office. And together we're going to go through this training in hopefully less than a half an hour for you all. We are recording the training so that we can share it with you at a later time and you can review the material. So first of all, what is CoCoRaHS? It's simply a grassroots, nonprofit, community-based, high-density precipitation network. There's volunteers, all backgrounds and ages, taking measurements in their own backyard. So if you have an interest in weather and an interest in science, you want to give back to the community, it's a great fit for you. And what we do is we measure precipitation. If it falls from the sky, we're interested in that. We measure rain, hail, and snow. And once you have a training session under your belt, much like the one we're going through here today, you collect data using low-cost measurement tools such as a ruler, a yardstick this time of year for your snowfall measurements, as well as a 4-inch capacity rain gauge, such as the one on the screen in front of you. We like to have everybody using the same kind of rain gauge so we can compare apples to apples. And if you don't have one already, there's a couple of choices I like to recommend. It's on the CoCoRaHS webpage. On the right-hand side, you'll see links to Weather Your Way and Ambient Weather. Those will take you right to at least a couple of sources where you can get that very low-cost rain gauge there to get started. And once you record your daily observations, you do so through this website. But to get started, you got to hit the join button. I think that it's actually a different button than what's indicated in front of you now. I think they updated it since this image was shared. I think it's very similar. I think it's orange now. But you just hit that join button, and it'll take you through a process where you'll sign up to become a CoCoRaHS observer. A station will be created with your information, your location, and all of that. And then Virginia and I will get your contact info, and we can reach out to you if you have any questions getting started and that sort of thing. So it's as easy as that. Why might you be interested in joining CoCoRaHS? Well, there's a couple of reasons to take you through. One is precipitation is highly variable. In the summertime, you might get a thunderstorm where you get rain at your house, but then just across the street, it's a sunny day. Same thing in the wintertime with the snowfall. Just a couple of neighborhoods across might be the difference between several inches, or even who got rain and who got snow when there's precip type issues we're trying to sort through. And also, data sources can be few and far between sometimes, especially out here in northeast Montana. The more observations we have, we can kind of fit together that puzzle a little bit nicer. And also, measurements aren't always that reliable. Sometimes people measure in a drift, so sources aren't always that accurate. And out here where it's windy in Montana, you don't have that uniform kind of snowfall that occurs. A lot of times we do have that blowing and drifting. So you guys are here to help. And also, storm reports save lives. We can get those reports not only in our verification, but also we can include them in our warnings and our advisories if they're timely, and it can really make a difference out there. And so here's an example of what we're talking about. So you can see, just look at Valley County, for example. We have a clustering there, and you can see how things varied across the area by color, and then how that is different from, say, Musselshell County. So just going, the distance there, you can see that over in Musselshell County, they had a trace of precip in that event to something much different here in Valley County. And of course, it's not just us at the Weather Office that uses CoCoRaHS observations. It's used by mosquito control, farmers and ranchers, teachers, education, drought committee, I should say, and many, many others, insurance adjusters, and all of those sources on your screen in front of you, just to name a few. So what we're going to talk about here next is what you need to get started, and then we'll go through how to take a measurement, how to report your measurements, and all of the rest. So the first thing is an application form. It's all done electronically now. Like I said before, and just hit that join button and go through the steps. It just takes a few minutes. We'll get your exact location and commitment to collect scientifically accurate data, and you may get some CoCoRaHS emails if you don't set us up in a spam folder, that is. And occasionally we'll also send not just information about CoCoRaHS, but additional training materials, weather science information as well. So if you like to learn about weather and science, CoCoRaHS is just a good place to be. Training a lot of times is online, like the course you are taking right now. You'll get a unique station number and name assigned to you, much like the one on your screen. As an example, in Sheridan County, 3.8 miles northwest of Plentywood. And you'll have a unique login and username assigned to you, and you can get started with your daily measurements. So how do you set up your equipment and observe, and how do you actually do all the measurements and all of that correctly? There's a lot that goes into that, but we're going to let Virginia take that over and start talking about some of the next steps here.
Hello, this is Virginia. So in this section, we're going to talk about how to measure snowfall and show you how to measure the snow depth and water content. All right, if snow is on your way, it is time to go out and remove the funnel and the inner tube that you would normally measure rain. Forgetting to do this step could lead to snow clogging and inaccurate measurements. There are 4 ways that the snow is measured during the winter. The 2 easiest and most helpful to measure is new snowfall on the gauge and on the ground, along with the total snow depth. The other 2 involve figuring out how much water content is in that snowfall and the water content and the total snow depth. The water content is particularly helpful during snowmelt and subsequent flooding that may occur. So when we refer to snowfall, we're talking about the accumulation of snow and ice over the past 24 hours prior to any melting or settling. Measuring snowfall is about as simple as sticking a ruler straight into the snow on the ground. There are some tips to keep in mind, however. In the spring and fall, measure snow where it won't be melted or disturbed by warm ground by measuring on grassy areas. During the dead of winter, utilizing the sidewalk or driveway could be useful because it may be cold enough and flat surface to measure snow. If you prefer the grassy area or have selected a designated location, you may continue to do so. Remember to clean the area after each measurement, though, so you can have a clean slate for the next new snowfall measurement you take. Taking a snow measurement may not work everywhere. Notice in this example that this person only measured 3 inches of accumulation here. But then measuring in the open, this person got 6.5 inches. It will be more accurate to take measurements away from any obstructions where the snow is least disturbed. So here in Northeast Montana, it's no secret that we live in a windy location. Sometimes snow will drift, and that will make taking measurements difficult. Just do the best you can to compute an average of several good measurements. So the area of new snowfall was wiped clean, but you will also need to consider taking a total snow depth. The total snow depth that you will also measure is the average depth of snow on the ground, including the old snow. Next slide. When the snow is melting away or is only partially covering the ground, record the average of the covered and the bare areas. Here's an example of how to record a partial snow coverage. Sorry, we go back another slide. Thank you. So here's an example of how to record partial snow coverage and when to report a trace of snowfall or snow depth. Notice that you have more than half the ground covered in snow. Notice if you have more than half the ground covered in snow or more than half of the ground that is bare. If you have more than half of the ground covered in snow, measure the snowy area. Say you have 2 inches there. When you take the average between the bare ground, 0 inches, and 2 inches, you would record 1 inch as your average total snow depth. If, however, the ground is mostly bare, you can record the total snow depth as a trace or a T for the amount. So when looking at the total snow depth, the key takeaway to keep in mind is to be consistent by measuring in the same general areas from day to day and being aware of whether you had new snowfall. Your total snow depth shouldn't be higher the next day if you didn't have new snow. So how much liquid is in that snow? We've measured snowfall and total snow depth. Now we need to figure out how much liquid is in the new snowfall. Notice the rain gauge here does not have the inner tube and funnel. You may also notice an accumulation of snow on the rim of your gauge, especially if you live in a protected area out of the wind. Don't wipe away that snow though. You can get a fly swatter or your snow swatter and gently tap the rim of the gauge.
This is just a classic example of how fly swatters can be used year-round.
Exactly. So some of the snow will fall in and some will fall out of the rim. We will disregard any snow that falls outside the gauge and just measure the parts that fell in. Next, you'll want to take the gauge inside to finish measuring the liquid content. You removed the inner tube and the funnel for the snowfall, but don't put those away in storage yet. You will need them at this point. Since we want to measure the liquid content of the snow, what you would need to do is make sure that the snow gets melted on the outer tube. And so what you may want to do is measure the amount of warm water in the inner cylinder and then add it to the outer cylinder to melt that snow. But make sure that you measure how much that you put that from the faucet into that outer tube, because then we will subtract that later. Here it's showing an example to carefully measure the warm water that you put in the inner tube to the nearest 100th of an inch. Don't forget that number. And then add the warm water to the snow sample until it is completely melted. So now that you have only liquid, the funnel can be very useful at this point because you can end up trying to pour it out of the larger tube and get water everywhere. Go slowly though, because you could also overfill that inner tube pretty quick. Remember that every drop counts. Now carefully read the water to the nearest 1/100th of an inch. Setting the tube on a flat surface will help keep it level. Don't forget to measure the bottom of the meniscus, the curved lens shape that the water in the tube may have due to water tension. So now you have the full tube with the water added. Now you want to take that added water and subtract it from the total amount, and then you'll know how much was just the snow that was melted. So here, if you had the full tube with the water added, you have 79 hundredths, but you only added half of an inch to that outer tube. So subtract that ½ inch, and your final reading of water equivalent to the snow was 29 hundredths. So now you want to get the liquid water content of a core sample. This can be particularly helpful if you had too much snow to catch everything in the gauge. So location, location, location. You want a representative location of where you measured the average total snow depth. Those are the locations that did not have any drifted, blown, or melted snow. This looks like the best place. So to cut a snow sample, turn your gauge upside down and push directly into the snow. You'll have to clear the snow around it in order to get as much snow in the tube as possible. Use your snow swatter to get between the snow and the ground below. Every drop still counts. And here in Montana, the snow can be very loose and whatnot. So having that swatter can be very helpful. None will fall back out. So after you slide the snow swatter under the gauge, carefully lift the tube and flip it. Slide, flip, lift, and flip. Some days there will be deeper snowfall. You will be off to push the tube straight down, turn, and directly pull out. But with deeper snow, sometimes it will hold a little bit better, especially if the snow is more wet. Just do the best that you can. You can also use that opportunity to take a deeper measurement of the total amount of snow that you have. Don't forget to melt that core sample and measure it the same way that you did previously, where you added warm tap water and then subtracted it once it all had melted. Record your measurements right away. You want to sign in to the CoCoRaHS website to enter in your data. There is a phone app available, but it's also fairly limited on the information that you can input.
One of
So
these
in the
days,
next
maybe we'll have
section,
training on that too, Virginia, for people.
yeah, that sounds great. In the next section, Rich will take over and talk about how to report your measurements.
Yeah, so we'll go through now that you know how to take a measurement, and Virginia mentioned the app. That is a great kind of fast on the fly way. I think it is more limited, as she said, but someday we'll have to put together a training for you guys out there that might be interested and learn how to use that as well. So just some ideas there for the future coming attractions, if you will. But for now, let's take a look at what we learned and let's see how to apply it. So you'll have this website in front of you, the CoCoRaHS site, and you click on the login button, enter your username and password that's unique to you. so don't share it. And you'll see on the upper left-hand side the daily precipitation. That's the one you're going to use probably most often. And you'll put the date, observation time. We try for consistency to get most people to send in the reports between 7 and 9 a.m. But that being said, if there's a particular time of day that works for you, CoCoRaHS can be adaptable. It can fit your lifestyle, your work schedule, and all of the rest. And the key is to make sure you measure the nearest hundredth. Remember, 5/100ths is 5/100ths, not 5/10ths. And you can sometimes put a little extra note. Maybe you can say something. In this case, they were talking about a thunderstorm where they measured 5/100ths, but they talked about that there were tree branches broken due to gusty winds. And then you submit it, and off it will go. You can click on the state of Montana and your specific county, and it'll show up there on the map. And each state does have its own CoCoRaHS page, so that when you click on the state of Montana from the home page, you'll see Montana's page, and you can zoom in by clicking on the county and see the report. So in this case, you can see how some places on this particular day in Sheridan County received just a trace of precip, while others didn't see anything at all. So that said, there are other reports that you should become familiar with, such as a hail report, your monthly zeros, multi-day report. And we'll go through some of these right now. If you're interested in learning how to take specific measurements for like hail and convective season, we do a warm season training for that. So be on the lookout for that in the spring. But here's what the report will look like just very quickly to help you get started. It's just right underneath the daily precip, and you enter the date, time, the smallest, average, largest hail size, and so forth there, and you submit it. The monthly zeros are here that, just let me put it to you this way. It's just as useful to know the days in which it did or didn't rain as it is to know the days that it did. Especially, for example, thunderstorm season, when that activity is often very hit or miss. Are you one of the ones that got something or didn't get something? The radar doesn't see everything. We rely on your reports for that ground truth. And then, of course, so if you're thinking to yourself, wow, do I really want to join CoCoRaHS and have to send in a report every day? My life is busy and I like to travel. Sometimes I have to travel for work. Well, don't worry about it. You can, again, CoCoRaHS is adaptable. It can work for you. If you're away for the week, you can simply measure the gauge, your rain gauge, when you come back, and you just put in a multi-day precipitation report, and send that information to us. So basically, just send us the information you have. And then you can also take a look at reports on the CoCoRaHS webpage, and you can sort a list. If you don't want to just look at the map, you can see the stations around you and what everybody else reported, and compare what you sent in to what others reported across the area, and that's always a fun time as well. And so let's go over, just to, as we kind of finish up our last thoughts, some common questions we get for CoCoRaHS is, do I have to be home every day to participate in CoCoRaHS? And again, the answer is no. Report when you're able to. Again, if you're gone, you can leave your gauge outside, report a multi-day total when you come back. And if you don't have a good place to put your rain gauge, Virginia was talking about that stubborn tree that's in the way, just do the best that you can. And if it comes down to it, you can always send us a photo, and we can help you to interpret that and to get that best location dialed in for you. Sometimes people ask if they have to report morning dew. Technically speaking, dew is not a form of precipitation that came from the clouds. So you can put that. Remember, we showed you the comment section where you can put, like, I think the other one was example, during a thunderstorm, they put broken branches. So you can put dew in the comment section, things like that. It's a nice to know, but it's not part of that daily reporting for CoCoRaHS. We specifically look for that precip that comes from the clouds, rain, hail, and snow. How long is your commitment? At least one season is helpful, but the longer you contribute, I got to tell you, the more valuable that data is. You almost develop a local climatology. And people often that have been reporting for many years, they can often see the changes um, that have happened over many years, and they get a sense of also what's normal. They might have a very wet season and say, "Hey, I've been doing CoCoRaHS for 20 years, but by golly, I've never seen anything quite like this one." So you get that sense the longer you do it. So that to that extent, the longer you do it, the more rewarding it can be. But again, just every bit helps. Every observation you send can have a difference to not just what we do in the weather office, but as we showed you in the beginning, just a number of different folks that are interested in that data. So thank you for your time here this morning. We appreciate your interest in CoCoRaHS. And anybody out there that is interested in joining CoCoRaHS, or if you know somebody that's interested, feel free to share this training with them uh, and help them get started. And for either Virginia and I, will be happy to help you get started you know, in CoCoRaHS and taking those observations. So thank you again very much for your time this morning. And again, hopefully look for that training in the spring for the warm season, and maybe we can get something together in the not so distant future and show you how to use the app and maybe showcase how to send in those observations.